Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so glad you're here. I'm glad you're interested in the topic of summer funding. We thought this would be a good topic today. We know that, as with everything here at Penn, we are decentralized, so there's lots of pools of funds for students. And we thought this discussion would be helpful for a couple of reasons that we'll review, of course, but making some people aware of a diversity of pools that are open to students, but also talking about ways that we could potentially streamline these, take best practices from one another, and learn from you all, and of course, hear your questions. So we do welcome you to put questions in the chat if you have them. Feel free to unmute yourself if there's a moment where you want to chime in about something. This is pretty casual this morning, so thank you again for joining us. And if we could go to the next slide, we'll introduce ourselves because we have a great panel this morning that I'm excited to join. So my name is Milan Kirshner. I'm an associate director in career services, where I work with college students and alumni, and I am one of the co-chairs of career services summer funding, along with Claire.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Claire Klieger, also in career services, the other co-chair of the summer funding committee, and also working with undergrads in arts and sciences. I've been in the office about 15 years now, and I will turn it over to Erica.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica Sebastian. I'm the Senior Associate Director in Penn Abroad, part of Penn Global. And one of the hats that I wear is I manage our summer internships and research abroad programming, which are also funding sources for our students, primarily undergraduate, but also some graduate students.
And hi, everybody. My name is Anne Vernon-Gray, and I'm the Senior Associate Director for Undergraduate Research at Kerf. As it says on the slide, I'm primarily responsible for administering the undergraduate research programs that come through our office. For the sake of clarity and brevity today, we're going to be focusing primarily on PERM. So since that's a lot of acronyms all in the same introduction, that's the Penn Undergraduate Research Mentorship Programs. And we're excited. Thank you.
So we met as a small group in advance of this, of course, to consider some of our goals, but we're open if others have thoughts and things that they want to cover as we discuss summer funding. Naturally, we hit on some common pain points and challenges, and we're surprised at the overlaps. In some places, some people had a good solution to some of our pain points, so we'll review some of those. We're also, of course, eager to hear and discuss strategies and tools to help. We're looking at some new software we know that could help this. But thinking about how we manage it, of course, and ways to improve. And then we're, of course, looking for some actionable next steps. So we are, at the end, we will be dropping a link to join a working group, the summer funding working group. So if you have interest in this, look for that at the end. And that's what we'll cover today.
We thought we'd kick things off just by giving you some context, to frame the discussion with some examples of the programs that we run. For those of you on the call who also participate in programs, feel free to put in the chat kind of the sorts of programs that you participate in. I think it might be an interesting and dynamic discussion to continue to follow. And so to that end, we'll sort of start. We thought it would be helpful to look at these things kind of together to give you a sense of sort of the different kinds of examples of things going on. I don't know, Anne, if you want to start and talk a little bit about Kerf, and as you said, in this instance, the undergraduate research program.
Mm-hmm. So thanks. So to give you all a sense of how the Penn Undergraduate Research Mentoring Program works, we, unlike some of the other programs you'll hear about, have a fixed, I use this word intentionally, award, because that's going to become important in some of our other discussions. So it's not a stipend or a grant. It's a $4,500 award that has changed over time, as have our number of applications. Year over year, we see growth in the number of applications. And because of the commitment from the provost, where we are primarily funded through, although there are some components of donors, and I just want to also acknowledge that we've gotten great collaboration and partnership with other offices centrally, including the student registration and financial services, and how we coordinate those. And I know that's also true for some of the other programs, with the P1P office, with some departments who have specific interests in funding things, but it's primarily funded through the provost office. So I would say historically, we've been able to fund around 25 to 30% of the students who apply. And so, the number of applicants continues to go up as the number of recipients does as well. The way we typically notify students of this particular opportunity, we are fortunate in that PERM was established formally in 2007 and therefore has a pretty well ingrained word of mouth phenomena of spreading amongst the undergraduates. But obviously coordinate through email, our website, through our social media pages. We also, one of the things that I wish I had put on this, what that Career Services has is campus partner outreach. So we obviously rely heavily on our partners to also help us spread the word. So I will stop talking and let Erica go.
And Erica, I think it would be helpful too, since some of the stats are kind of here for people to follow, to kind of talk about sort of the nature of the program itself, maybe for GRIP and VIA and how those are different.
Yes, I am just having my coffee, and so I'm realizing I didn't actually say what these acronyms stand for. So sorry, everyone. So in Penn Abroad, we have 2 summer internship abroad programs. The first is our flagship program, founded back in 2007, called GRIP. It has changed names a couple of times, but it stands for the Global Research and Internship Program, or GRIP. This is an 8 to 12 week long summer internship or research abroad program that comes with guaranteed funding. So it is non-credit. It is always in the summer. It is always 8 to 12 weeks long. And it is one of our most popular and competitive programs. This year, I don't think I need to tell anyone why it was a weird year, but it was a challenging year, to say the least, to be in all of our positions, and study abroad and research abroad was no exception. And so we did found a new program this year, last year actually, called VIA, Virtual Internships Abroad. Well, the GRIP program has pivoted temporarily to being offered in a virtual format, and we have every intention to bring the program back to its traveling on-site format. The Virtual Internships Abroad program, or VIA, has been designed explicitly to take place in a virtual format, and the intention behind it is to continue to offer this program alongside GRIP to attract and provide access to global experiences for students who may not be able to participate in GRIP or other programs on-site abroad for financial reasons, personal reasons, immigration reasons, really any other barrier. It's important to us that we continue to provide access to these meaningful global experiences. So our intention is moving forward to continue to offer both programs, with GRIP being the on-site and virtual VIA being the virtual option. So that's the basic gist of these programs. These stats in the awards are GRIP numbers. So GRIP, the way that our funding works is we guarantee every student who's accepted between 50 and 100% of the total estimated cost. I'm going to be talking a little bit later in our presentation about how we figure out the estimated costs, and hopefully generate some discussion among our colleagues here. But basically, we provide estimations on everything from housing abroad, personal expenses, food, plane tickets, visas, all of those things. We come up with a figure, and these vary widely. So it's going to cost a different amount to live in, Tokyo versus Costa Rica. And so we put together program-specific budgets, and every accepted student is guaranteed at least 50% of that amount. And for our highest need students, it is a need-based scale. We are providing up to 100% with guaranteed funding for our highly aided students of 100%. VIA, we have been covering a program fee 100%. So it is free to participate for our students. It comes with your internship placement virtually. It comes with a number of cultural and professional support programming, such as language learning, networking events, Resume and professional development workshops are all included in that fee, but it does not, neither program provides what you consider to be a stipend. And like what Anne was describing, we also use the word award. This is important because it's really for tax purposes, and so it doesn't mess with their financial aid. It's important that we use the term award so that we, that's really been what's been advised to us by the tax office. These are amounts that are intended to offset costs. So these are not stipends or salaries. These are amounts that are offsetting the cost of the program. The numbers you'll see in applicant recipients are this year's numbers. VIA is new, so hopefully it will continue to be big, robust, and popular, as you can see. Really hard to say once travel is back, though. So pray for us. We hope that there continues to be an important play for this program. GRIP numbers went significantly down this year. We normally have over 400 applicants, but given the kind of wait and see approach that we took this year, and ultimately the decision to offer the program virtually, we were still really, really excited to have almost 300 applications and over 100 participants this year. We have a huge marketing campaign. We work with a lot of people on this call, so thank you to all of you who have collaborated with us in the past. I see Kelly, I see Mark, College and Career Services. You guys are the main way that we get the word out is through collaborations. We also are very lucky to have a full-time marketing manager on staff who does awesome social media campaigns. We are very thankful to Career Services for letting us advertise the program in Handshake, as well as our info sessions, which has been a great tool as well.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So for then summer funding in our office, many of the programs across campus, and obviously these are just 3 examples of many other things that exist. But our funding is one of the sort of like the catch-all funds. So you see, with both of these other 2 examples, with the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships, it's research focused, although there's a wide variety of research opportunities that students can pursue in all sorts of different disciplines. So it's very diverse in that sense. Penn Global is internationally focused. Most funding sources, whether within Penn or externally, have some sort of focus like that, Real Arts, Platt, Civic House, like there are all sorts of areas in which there's a focus. The Career Services funding is designed to be open. So it's still hoping to address that need of, having awards to cover expenses associated with pursuing a professional opportunity, but it doesn't matter. We're agnostic about what that professional development is, as long as it's kind of in line with students' career goals. It has to be a minimum of 6 weeks. Pre-COVID, it had to be a minimum of 30 hours a week. During COVID, we lowered that to 20 hours a week. And in order to qualify, students had to, in essence, and it can be, our funding is sort of interesting in that we had our own bucket of money. And so we were considering both undergrads and graduate students for those opportunities. Preference was given to students who were on financial aid, were first gen, and who otherwise demonstrated significant, financial need in some way, shape, or form. This year, thanks to a very generous opportunity through Student Financial Services, thank you so much. We now have expanded that significantly to include a $500,000 amount that we can distribute specifically for students who qualify at that middle income bracket just above the highly aided. So for students up to $140,000, and no, they don't have to be U.S. citizens. So international students, documented, undocumented, we have funded all of those students. So thanks for that question, Zoe. And so this is a process by which students can apply, but it's kind of complicated things for us because we still have our internal pool of money where it's anybody, but then with this bigger pool of money, they have to be undergrads and they have to meet this other sort of set of criteria in terms of that middle income bracket. And it's not a flat rate like it is for Kerf. Our awards, just like with Penn Global, vary depending upon the need. So they can be up to $4,000, but it's not a set price. All right, So I know we have lots to talk about. Just to kind of give you a picture. So it's many things to kind of juggle, right? And on the student end, if you're thinking about pursuing funding, there's a whole season of stuff to be thinking about. And again, this is just a snapshot. There are more players in the mix than just this, but just to sort of give you an idea of how much time and energy is being expended both administratively and by students who are searching for funds and maybe in some cases submitting multiple applications for the same opportunity, all of which are time intensive. So the impact of some of this is that this is just for our programs, that we're then able to provide funding to almost 500 students this cycle, with a collective amount of money that's greater than $2 million. So that's pretty exciting, but even with all of that, it doesn't go anywhere near kind of meeting the need, I think, that exists on campus. Erica, I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of share a little bit about how we're then showcasing the impact that has through highlighting student stories.
Yeah, so what you're looking at here are some examples from our Instagram and social media content, which is really one of our many platforms, and we use it primarily to engage with our students, and we tag them, we interact with them, we do takeovers with them, and we also use it to engage with you. So with our campus colleagues, we've been very known to tag your office, tag a member of your team, and we really rely on each other to reshare and to keep each other engaged. And this has been really, really successful. We have been really excited about the way that we've been able to share student stories and student voices using the social media platform. So that's been really, really exciting. We also have a we have a couple of requirements of our funding recipients. And one of the primary, we try to make it, easy, but also like we expect a little something in return. And what that is primarily is blogging. So we require all of our GRIP and VIA funding recipients to submit 3 blogs during the course of their internship. And that is something that we also use quite a bit on our website and in our stories. And we generate so much content, not only for our stewardship reports for our generous donors, but also for our website and for our social media. So we're constantly soliciting student stories in this way. And it's been a real highlight, I think, of our outreach. And I think has really contributed to a lot of buzz. I always make the joke, like, students don't want to hear from me, they want to hear from each other. Like, they don't care nearly as much about what I think as what their peers think. And so we're really all about putting the student voices first.
I know, Melinda, you were going to say a little something about, what that looks like in our office then?
Yeah, very similar. So we also require students to submit a blog post, which we feature. The blog is really nicely integrated into our updated website now. So it's just accessible often right as it's posted, and they get posted throughout the year. And then they also fall under the career communities. So if someone is looking at a certain industry on our website, these blog posts come up really prominently so people can see the opportunities that Penn helped these students pursue. So very similar to GRIP. And I completely agree with Erica that they love hearing from each other. And these blog posts are always great to read every year.
I'm sorry, before we go to this one, I'm just going to jump in because I'm giving you a wink, wink, nod, nod. Didn't make it into the presentation, but the Center for Undergraduate Research and Fellowships also likes to highlight our student voices and celebrate the impact that all of this funding provides. And the primary way that we do that, we have a fairly, at this point, minimal social media presence, and integrating into our already enormous website. I know Career Services feels that pain. It has proven to be less effective. And so, but we have every year 2 different poster sessions. The one in the Fall Research Expo, which typically happens in early September. We have usually over 400, around 400 students who present their work. And it's for any of you who have ever been, it's a very lively and loud and exciting time in Houston Hall when that happens in person. But since we have transitioned, we actually now have a permanent place to store those posters, and it happens on the Penn Presents platform, which I would encourage all of you to go check out, because there are some really inspirational stories and research there, examples of research there. So just my little bit. And also, while I'm on the platform, I would just want to reiterate what is happening in the chat and lift that up to say that, yes, we are only talking about, even with the PERM program, we're only talking about a small portion of what happens in our office. And absolutely, there are other things happening around. One of the reasons we're trying to have this conversation is to highlight all of those and bring everybody together. So thank you, as has already been said, to everybody on the call who is part of this network and is working together to lift these students up. And we look forward to continuing that in a perhaps more streamlined way after this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, these were just meant to be some examples. We know that there are many, many players who do significant work in this area. And so we appreciate you providing, some of those examples in the chat. And so it's mostly to focus on sort of, common kind of challenges, through the lens of these facilitators. So it's in no way meant to diminish the significant work and contributions that you all make. And we are all so appreciative and so glad that you're here to have this conversation. So with that in mind, we're hoping that we can come together to kind of shine a spotlight on some of those pain points and challenges and move to work together to brainstorm around possible solutions. So some of the challenges that we've noted, and this is where I think Milan put a piece in the chat. We'd love for you to sort of add to this from your perspective as well, so we can keep kind of a running tabulation. The main things that we've noticed from an administrative end, we've already pointed out there's always less funding than there is demand for that funding. Because there are different sort of restrictions or qualifications related to eligibility for these funds. We've seen that even come up in the chat today. Can graduate students apply? Well, for this fund, but not that fund. You can imagine how confusing that gets for students as well. So managing expectations is a challenge about, what's the right funding to apply for? What kinds of costs can it cover? Wanting to be equitable. So, making sure that we can fund as many students as possible. Frequently we hear, who can fault the student for wanting to try and cover all their bases they're applying with the same opportunity for any of the possible funding sources they can to up their chances, because these are frequently competitive processes of gaining funding, securing that funding. And sometimes as a result, they may get funding from multiple offices. And so maybe they get funding from Kerf for $4,500, and they get funding from Career Services for $4,000, and they get funding from Real Arts, for $4,000. And all of a sudden, no matter how worthy that student's individual case is, they probably don't need quite that much funding to make their opportunity a reality. And when we could have funded 3 students, we've triple funded 1. And so, following up and making sure and being in communication with other offices. The sheer volume of applications, is sometimes overwhelming, and it creates delays then, right? The tax implications and communicating that up front, particularly for international students, so that students get really excited. Oh, I'm getting this award. And they don't think about the fact that, yes, that's the award that you're getting, but it's the amount of money that shows up in your bank account or on as part of whatever mechanism for delivering that, which is yet another challenge, I would say, is going to be less than whether now or later than what it says in your award letter. And the variables that show up as part of this too, where you've got, students who thought they're, especially during COVID, we're seeing even more of that. So, I thought it was going to be in virtual, but now it's in person. So my situation has changed. Oh, I thought, it was going to be this, but something happened and it fell through. Can I use it for something, else instead? Or just life's curveballs that sometimes we see with students. That means that there's constant kind of follow up or checking in that takes up, a large amount of time. And for those awards that are not standardized, like, Kerf has or other offices may use in their funding processes, but when you're, trying to stretch your dollars, so you're only, awarding what you think is needed, trying to assess what that need is really challenging when cost of living varies, variabilities may be in place, for different locations. And that's a lot of time and effort too. Equally, we see challenges on the student side. So I don't know if somebody else, one of the other facilitators, wants to talk through these, just so people don't have to hear me talking the whole time.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
So, I think that part of a common thread through all of our offices is that we all do this to try to support our students. And so we're always, wearing two different hats, right? We're wearing our administrator hat, but also trying to think about this and respond in real time in many cases to what the student is experiencing and what the student is feeling, and try to make these processes easier for us in order to make the processes more streamlined and accessible for the students. So in the chat, somebody was asking about, feedback on many of the programs that we run. And these are just some of the things that we have variously pulled out and discussed prior to this particular presentation. I am sure there are more. I think the first issue Claire has already alluded to is that there is an entire season, and we could have complicated that slide, much further, just by adding, again, even just the programs that we run within these three offices. And so, it becomes almost another job for the students to identify what each of the opportunities are, which ones they would be eligible for. But even if they're doing that, there may be a lack of awareness about what funding opportunities there are. So as many students who are spending an entire day looking for all the different offices and all the different ways that they could apply for funding, there is many students who are unaware of the opportunities that are available to them. And then, it takes a lot of time to apply for these things. And each one will have a slightly different requirement, and they're just different enough to make it annoying to where they have to rewrite something. And so, yes, they will have the broad strokes of what it is that they're proposing to do, but they still spend a lot of time, changing each one for each of the different applications. One of the biggest problems is, you aptly named here, the chicken and egg timing. So students will either apply for a program like PERM, almost like a backup, which is no skin off our nose. Again, they should absolutely be applying for all the things to cover their bases in this system, how it is currently set up. But if they're applying for that, maybe they get back to us after they're sort of halfway through the process to say, I'm dropping out, and that messes up a faculty member. Or they come to Career Services to apply for funding for a job they don't yet have, right? They know that they're applying in a field where they are not going to have, it's a nonprofit, they're not going to have, it's at least going to be underpaid, if not completely unpaid. We see that also in our nonprofit and in our more arts, humanities, culturally related opportunities. The cash flow challenges, again, we see students who, particularly on our lower income scale, who are meeting the requirements to be able to make the opportunity a reality, but only just. And because of some of the ways, I will say that Penn we have advocated for these changes and Penn has been responsive in making sure that it's not typical anymore for students to get paid monthly in arrears, right? They can get these awards and get them in a more upfront fashion so that if they need to make rent, if they need to, be able to put a down payment, they're able to do that. But that's always a challenge, the timing of that. We think about, yes, the spring semester is an entire season for funding, but some of us do it early so that they can have their positions in place by X period of time. But other times, they don't know what they'll be doing until later. And so they need to find out a little bit later, and that creates all kinds of challenges.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, Anne, sorry, is just the piece about, we frequently see students who over the course of the summer may be making enough money to cover their collective expenses, but they don't have upfront the, deposit money or the money to get to a particular location. And depending upon, again, the eligibility requirements or what sorts of things might be covered by funding, that might mean that they apply for funding thinking that they're eligible when they're not. And that's a real challenge, because if a student is making $14,000 for the summer, but they don't have enough money to put down a down payment on their first month's rent, but then you've got another student who's making no money for the summer, who's the more compelling candidate, right? Like this is part of what I meant. And the chicken and egg timing is also, you have students who get trapped between knowing that there's no way they can accept an opportunity unless they have funding, but they, in many of these instances, they can't apply for funding unless they've already secured their opportunity. So there's immense amounts of stress around students.
And the cash flow challenges also include, maybe they're making enough money, again, to make that opportunity possible. And I said, but only just, maybe they don't have enough, they're not making enough to then save for what they need to do for their academic turn time. And so then left potentially making a choice between, fulfilling their real academic, professional, intellectual, passion pursuits and a more transactional opportunity where they can make enough money to, make things more comfortable. And so are we supporting them in sort of actualizing their potential versus not? And so, yes. And then just the gaps between the maximum award amounts and need. I think that's a fairly obvious one that we've touched on in multiple different places.
So we kind of want to hear from you all in the audience in terms of, are there any other challenges that we're missing that you all have encountered either on the administrative side or on the student side that you think are worth discussing? So you could either put it in the chat, you can unmute yourself, you can add it to the bulletin board that we put up. Anybody have anything they want to say? Val says students who choose not to apply for lucrative summer opportunities because they believe the beginning costs to be too much of a challenge. Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, in the interest of time, if something occurs to you, please, we would have this to be an ongoing dialogue. So, so here's the link to the Padlet. So people can please put your thoughts in there. We're hoping that that'll be a way to help us organize things moving forward. So the impact then of these challenges are that, there are students we're missing in the process, right? Whether they don't know about it or they're overwhelmed. There are delays both on the decision side, due to all of this, and on receiving funds for students, which obviously is a negative impact that we don't want to see. And it's a significant amount of effort and time that I think we're all very happy to be involved with. Lynn and I frequently talk about how this is one of the favorite parts of our job, but it is very time consuming. And that means, that there are other things that, equally important things that we want to be prioritizing that maybe we can't during funding seasons. And as the volume of applicants go up, that just is a problem that compounds. So, and I'm sure that's true for all of you who are working with students and interested in this issue. So that, again, is part of why we wanted to bring this together. So to think about so what can we do to collectively, brainstorm around this and make it such that, we can streamline, how can we work together to address some of this and maybe work in that way. So actually, I actually wanted to open it up, and if people have thoughts that they wanted to share. Oh, so some things that have come in. Sharon says it's a systemic issue. Concerns about for-profit employers who, not startups, but other employers, particularly financial employers. I know, Sharon, who don't pay summer interns. It's especially frustrating when you feel like they have the ability to, and they're just opting not to. So if there's anything else that, other thoughts or ideas that people have. And I can't see the Padlet because I'm sharing my screen.
Feel free to unmute yourselves if you want to add anything. Obviously, we're monitoring the comments, but I see someone else noted that they serve grad students, and there's fewer funding opportunities for grad students, which is definitely the case, we've realized. So exploring solutions for that too. I'm being told you can't unmute yourself, so if you wanted to raise your hand. Someone said they'd like to know more about the impact of first year versus upperclassmen to participate. Oh, this is a great question. This is something that we have changed in career services, and that student financial services has changed as well. So it used to be that you had to be going into your senior or your junior year to qualify as a highly aided student for funding. It is now changed to any 2 summers. So there's more flexibility there, as often in those later summers, you're more likely to be getting a paid internship. Sharon's point notwithstanding, unfortunately. And that's the case for career services funding too. We also consider first year students. And one of the factors we evaluate is how many experiences the student has had before. So if it seems really important for the student to get this opportunity now so they can progress, so we do definitely consider underclassmen, if that answers that question.
Looks like Mark is raising his hand. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I just want to synthesize something that is coming out of some of the information that you all presented, and it's important to emphasize that whatever solution is developed needs to be very carefully framed and be holistic in nature, right? The extent to which Penn First Plus encounters international students who we provide top-up funding to cover for tax-on grant because that was not calculated into their budget, or other students who need supplemental grants to be to make it to their final location for their internship, or for those students who are benefiting from one of the global programs and who did not have the presence of mind to think that they could also get highly aided funding on top of that to support their summer expenses. That sort of holistic, wraparound, very careful thinking about the student is asking for this, and what else can we offer them through our centralized process to make sure that they are successful in pursuing that particular opportunity is an incredibly important conversation. Also taking the time, and I put this on the idea board as well, in terms of thinking carefully about how this pool of funding is differentiated from other opportunity funding that exists, right? There are some pools that are very idiosyncratic to the populations of the offices that they serve, whereas the pools that you are all talking about are open to any undergraduate, and in some case graduate students too. And so there are a number of touch points that I invite us all to think about as this conversation continues.
That's a great segue, Mark, actually, in terms of, and we knew this would happen, like people would have all sorts of ideas. And so we want to keep the momentum moving. We would love to kind of have our vision and dream is that in a perfect world, we can have collective conversations that are intentional, thoughtful, look at all the nuances that you're raising, and really sort of, make a lot of these issues more transparent, so that we're removing some of the barriers for students. I know there are some of us now who are exploring, for instance, maybe a vendor that could be utilized by multiple offices for different applications, where then through that vendor, offices could talk to each other seamlessly, and everyone could have their own disparate processes, but students could potentially apply once, or then there could be supplemental questions. Anyway, that's one possibility. Another thing could be something like this, which Erica can mention quickly, and I think we're down to 3 minutes, Erica, about even just, can we have a centralized source of resources around what are costs in different locations? If you want to say something, Erica, about your budget, just to give an example of the kind of research that you guys do.
Yeah, so we basically do full research in the fall for every summer program individually by program location and length. So if it's 12 weeks long and it's in Hong Kong versus 8 weeks long and it's in Buenos Aires, we are doing annual research to update all of those estimated costs. And those are based on online research as well as student feedback and employer information. So we are basically cobbling together all of what our past interns have told us, what our employers are telling us about the cost of living, and other research that we can find to make these as accurate as possible, so that because this is what we're basing our funding on. And so I'm always happy to share other resources or information about this to anyone who's interested in how we pull these together. This is one of them, but they're all different.
Great. So for anybody who wants to keep this conversation going and, actively work towards trying to ideate around some potential solutions to streamline processes for administrators and, of course, more importantly, for students, we invite you to join a working group. So there's a link that Milan has very kindly put in the chat. Thank you, Milan. To sort of gauge, interest in joining this group, and specifically around particular challenges or topics that you'd want to pursue further through the group. So please, let us know if you want to do that. And we're asking too about preferences about how often maybe the group would ideally like to meet. So we'd love to continue the conversation. Thank you so much for your time today and your enthusiasm and your energy. Thank you to my co-facilitators for sharing their wisdom and perspectives and being willing to have this conversation. And thank you to all of you for your focus on this issue and your energy around trying to find solutions. Much appreciated. Everybody, I think, who's supporting students' challenges around funding deserves to be applauded.